calling the special meeting to order. Can I get a roll call, please?
Sure can. Kimberly Smith-Calaga.
Present.
John Chartier.
Here.
Melissa Clark here. Marianne Dwyer.
Here.
Lisa Cavaluna.
Here.
Kevin McClellan. Diane Salter.
Here.
Jan Meek.
Here.
Carly Stone.
Here.
Diane Zidane.
Here.
Dr. Carl Heydrich.
Here.
All right.
Okay, we'll all stand for pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, before we start, we are going to rearrange a couple things on the agenda. Our new number 4 will be a COVID update, and we're moving public comments and questions to just before adjournment. So number 4 is going to be COVID update. Number 5 will stay Title IX policy discussion. And number 6 will be substitute pay, teacher pay if we have time. And then we will do public comments and questions. Because this way, there may be some answered by Dr. Heydrich after he gives us some of the information that he's going to pass on to us. If for some reason this meeting runs to 6:30, we will stop the public comments and continue them in our regular meeting, so that nothing will be left unfinished. But when we get there, I'll describe, we're going to do public comments actually where you will speak to us. They will not be typed in, so you will have to raise your hand with your name to it and Maria will call you. Okay, first on our agenda business, we have COVID update. Dr. Heydrich.
Well, thank you and good evening. What I did hand around to you was a spreadsheet that coincides with our spreadsheet that we use on the website to identify probable and confirmed cases for both staff and students per building. And so this data has been put in the spreadsheet. Oh, there you go. Thanks. Put in the spreadsheet since October 15th. All the way from transportation to central office, and the individual buildings are listed in there. And some of the outcomes from completed to investigated as well. And some of the data we've had from October 15th included 6 students who have tested positive from October 15th and 7 staff members that have tested positive. For today, we had an increase in activity. We had a lower elementary student and a preschool student test positive. Had a probable case at the middle school. Staff member at the high school test positive. And we also had 6 employees that are in quarantine and transportation. So we have had an uptick in local cases with the school district. I also pulled the report from the Brandon School District from the Oakland County website. And as of 11/11/20 in the area, in the Brandon School District area, as far as community spread, there are currently 87 cases. And I'm sure that's going to get updated and possibly increased for the following week. So that's some of our local data. Of course, the health department for this region issued the executive order, which mandated that high schools move to virtual learning on November 18th. But it also has in there a local decision for PK instruction and also consultation with the health department. I talked to our local health department officials today. The health department will not mandate or direct school districts to close or open, and that they're going to leave that as a local decision. But they do caution about in-district or in-building transmission, and to constantly monitor that throughout the district. So far, our tracing program and our mitigation strategies have done very well for the Brandon School District, and I appreciate all the work of central office administrators and the staff, and all the way to the parents and community, because it really takes everyone on board to make our buildings as safe as possible for students and staff. So that's where we're at this point in time, and the idea of continuing PK instruction is doable. We just have to be very careful on in-district or in-building transmission, and we also have to be mindful of any type of staff shortage that we might encounter, employee shortage in all sectors, because we could have some operational issues in the district. So those two main ideas, those big ideas, we constantly have to be mindful of, because at any time, any of those could potentially shut down a building and would have to take a pause regardless of the emergency order in any of those buildings at any time. And so I just wanted to have you aware of that, of those two big ideas as well. So that's pretty much what I have for you this evening, and just open it up for discussion.
And if I could explain to the board, we'll discuss, or if we want to get any questions you want to answer, again, listen to what maybe public comment will say, but we would like to be able to give you direction in the regular meeting. There's a section there for COVID-19 update. Anybody have any questions for Dr. Heydrich on this? Board members?
I'd like to reserve it for the 6:30 meeting so that we can move on with our special meeting agenda, if that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good with 6:30
Okay,
discussion.
Lisa?
That's fine.
Okay, John, any questions for Dr. Heydrich?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if there's no other discussion on COVID update, we will next talk Title IX policy.
Okay, thank you. So we've been working with this for a little bit of time. So you had 5 PDFs. You had a Neola policy that we're recommending not to take, much lengthier. The Troon policy is much more condensed, 17 pages. You also had a PDF of forms that we would use in an event that we would have a Title IX sexual harassment case in the district. And also, if we choose to move on with the Troon policy in a first and second reading, we would have to rescind the 5517, which is your existing Neola policy, so that we could insert the standalone policy of the 17-page Troon document. So it's my recommendation to move forward with the Troon document. We have our administrative team that is going to go to training. I'm already currently trained in Title IX, and we have 3 other administrators that are going to go to training. Diane, Carly, and Mr. Tucker will be going to training. So in addition to that, we do have some, we have to make the policy accessible online. So the public, it's very visible to the public. And I think that would meet the requirements to meet the requirements of the current Title IX policy for the district. As far as the little bit of background, this went into effect on August 14, 2020, and it's a mandate for schools to have a Title IX sexual harassment complaint that's up to date. You already have a good policy in your Neola manual now, but this is just updating the policy. And it also allows us to obtain, where we obtained a video that all staff would be able to, would be mandated to watch. So they're all up to date in Title IX as well. And then for our administrative team, we would certainly use the Troon vetted forms if we have a Title IX case of harassment in the district. A couple changes here to keep in mind on this is through this, before we had a Title IX coordinator in the district that was representative for the entire district. Now they're suggesting a Title IX co-coordinators where, and they're suggesting gender, male and female, to work for the district. And there's also a lot of different roles that we haven't seen before in the old policy. An investigator role, a decision maker role, and appeals officer. So none of those roles for administrators was in your previous policy. So that is a change, and the process is very tedious and comprehensive. So if we have a case, we are going to have to work through it in many steps to ensure that it's a fair investigation for all parties involved. And one of the words that comes up is bias in an investigation, and make sure that we have less biases when we investigate. So that's one change. Another one is preponderance of evidence, ensuring that we can decide if there is a case in the district that a sexual harassment claim, that we can measure the best we can to see what the evidence is like to continue that investigation further. That's probably a summary of the case. A lot of documentation. You have to keep your sexual harassment claims on file for 7 years now. So that's a long time. You have to be in the district for 7 years. It's very thorough, very comprehensive. And as soon as we get all our 3 administrators trained, we will be ready to go for any cases in the district.
Has anybody got any questions for Dr. Heydrich on this? I know there was a lot of paperwork involved and a lot of reading. Diane?
When is their training scheduled for?
December 8th, and it's a 1-day training through True Law Firm.
I will say, as a non-lawyer person, this was way easier to read and very straightforward compared to the old policy that just with the language and complexity in it. This is clearer. So useful.
I'm glad we're getting this updated.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's time.
it is time. It's
Yeah.
time. And the training, I think too, was something we've talked about in the past, trying to have this. And I'm glad we're moving forward with this. And so again, being able to start this.
Will there be annual training? How does this roll? Does this
Yeah,
get annual updates?
Yeah, I think, yes, there could be an update to the policy as it changes. Different administrations may prompt those changes. As far as training goes, it probably will be an annual video, even if it's the same video or modified video that the staff has to watch every year.
Yep. And I know that's not the most exciting thing, but I think it's important that it refreshes
Yes.
every year, at least every year. So
we'll probably we're going to add that right to our training bank of things we need to do for professional development on an annual basis.
Last year we had it, you recall, we did that sexual harassment training. I want to say November for part of the staff and December for part of the staff. Every building had it separately. And we had someone come present from outside.
Good.
And just finally, with the first reading and the second reading on December 21st, I anticipate we'll recommend Diane and myself being the co-coordinators for Title IX for the policy.
Can you explain the first reading and the second reading? What's the purpose behind that? I don't really
Oh,
know what
okay.
that is.
Yes, and maybe the structure is a little bit different, but the first reading is an opportunity for you to review the policy. And then if you have any questions within the month between this board meeting and the next board meeting, please ask them to me or Diane, and we will get the answers for you. So we have a little bit of space and time between the readings to clear up any questions you might have. And then once the second reading is done, then it becomes policy in the manual.
And we don't read the full policy because it'll be posted.
That's right.
But
That's
we
what
are
we do.
reading that we're announcing that we're doing this. It's posted. We really want people to start looking at it. And again, we're getting it from our law firm, and
Yep.
this is not words that we came up with or making up. This is based on the law and policies that have already been approved.
Yeah, thank you. So they recommend not changing the policy, keeping it as is because it's already been attorney.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns? Okay, with none, substitute teacher pay.
Okay, all right. Well, we were talking about the substitute teacher shortage. We're very fortunate to have some district float substitute teachers that we were able to have at the secondary level, and I think we're working towards that at the elementary level. And these substitute teachers work every day in the district as needed. On the other hand, our daily substitute teachers that we have sporadically throughout the year that we get through Regis staff, we're looking at to remain competitive and have a rate that would attract daily substitutes to come to Brandon. And so the spreadsheet that is out there is a standard daily sub rate for most of Oakland County. And we also added a few that we could of area schools outside of the county. And that's where we're at. If you can see that we're not the lowest, especially if you go outside the county, but it is trickling up the daily sub rate that I think as districts find sub shortages, they ask their boards to move up the daily sub rate a bit. I was talking with Jan about this a little bit, or we communicated through email, and we looked at potentially to remain competitive without raising it too high is to go around $95.
Okay, so the recommendation is up to 95.
That's correct.
I'm comfortable with that because the average, when you average all these totals out, is $95. So I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, and I see that puts us in line with like more than half the other districts that are already there.
Do we know how much money we spent on substitutes last year?
I do not know that. Jan, I don't know if you can ballpark that or you'd have to go back to.
In a typical year for the 4 buildings, we're maybe $90,000, $85,000 to $90,000.
So what's this gonna do, this increase, what's it gonna do to that number? I'm not that smart.
They won't increase it.
Like how much, by approximately how much?
Well, it'd be $8. Let's see, that's about a 10% increase. So I guess we could say about a 10%.
Okay.
So maybe $10,000 or so.
Go ahead, Diane.
Well, I just want to share that. I can't imagine the number being higher for daily subs because we're not getting them.
Right.
We're all-
Yeah, there's a
we're all selling.
shortage. Yeah, there's a shortage
So,
in addition to the pay, right? I mean, our current environment
Right.
is a cause for that as well. And
Yeah.
so it's a complex issue. I get it. I just wanted to hear the numbers
Yeah.
so that we know what we're doing to our budget.
Yeah, it'll definitely affect the general fund with an increase. There's no doubt about it.
The permanent, if I can jump in, the permanent subs were paying $16 to $18 an hour, but those positions are committing to being in our building every day.
And Jan, is any of this, like if they sub because a teacher's out on quarantine, do we get federal money to help subsidize some of this? Or
No, not directly. We got, we have our federal money that's supposed to just kind of be used for all of these things, so all of our additional costs, but not directly for subs.
Anybody got any questions, concerns about this?
I guess I just have a comment that, agree, it's nice to look at the averages. I guess I'm more careful to look at what our neighbors are doing because those who are subbing in this area, maybe I'm wrong in this, but I would think they'd be staying somewhat local. So I think it positions us well as best we can put our best foot forward in these times compared to our neighbors to assist us in maybe getting a nod. Compared to others. So I support it.
And I do too. John, any questions, concerns?
No, I support it. Let's go.
Okay.
Yeah, when you look at Goodrich and Clarkston and
It
such.
puts us in a nice position.
I'm sorry?
It puts us in a nice
It does,
position.
yeah.
With
Yes.
neighboring districts for sure.
Those are the ones I zoned in on.
Yeah.
I mean, not to ignore the rest, but
Yes.
yeah.
circled those.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Why
exactly.
isn't Oxford? I don't see
Yeah, I don't
Oxford.
see
I didn't see Oxford either.
Yeah, I said almost all of Oakland County, but we
Yeah,
had a couple
sure.
voids there.
Sure. We just-
Okay, if there's no other discussion on this, do we have anybody that has their hand up, Maria? Yep. And if I could just explain that for people that were doing public comments and questions or any kind of citizens input, we'd ask that you, again, raise your hand. And when you're called upon, they give you name, address, and group affiliation, if any. And to our community members, parents, and those that are listening, we do recognize the value of public comments and the importance of expressing yourselves to us on district matters. But here are some guidelines. Again, please recognize yourself. Each statement will be limited to 3 minutes. The statement should be directed at the board only. Generally, the board will not respond to public comments during the meeting. To ensure due process and respect of individual rights, the district maintains a formal process for handling complaints against individuals. A problem involving an individual or specific incident is best handled through the administrative channels. Such matters should be reduced to writing and sent to Dr. Heydrich or to me, the board president. Speakers are asked to express themselves in a civil manner with due respect to the dignity and privacy of others who may be affected by your comments. While it is not our intent to stifle public comments, speakers should be aware that if your statements violate the rights of others under the law of defamation or invasion of privacy, you may be held legally responsible. If you are not sure of the legal ramifications of what you are about to say, we urge you to consult first with a legal advisor. And again, we want to hear what you have to say. And again, we expect each speaker will model for our students and others in the audience on how we can respectfully disagree with others' views or voice an opinion or ask questions. Go ahead, Maria.
I'm Krista Anderson here.
And Krista, you're going to be up.
Krista, do you want to unmute?
That was not intentional. No question.
No question? Oh, well, welcome.
Okay.
Okay. And again, raise your hand.
I do not see any hands.
Okay, we do not see any hands up. Again, there'll be more chances in the regular meeting. And at this point, if there's no other discussion, I'm going to call the special meeting adjourned. And we've got about 2 minutes before our regular meeting.
Join meeting? I don't know, mine's in join meeting.
How we doing, Maria?
Okay.
Okay, calling the Brandon regular board meeting to order. Could I get a roll call, please?
Kimberly Smith Colaga here. John Chartier,
Here.
Melissa Clark here. Mary Ann Dwyer here. Lisa Cavaluna here. Kevin McClellan. Diane Salter,
Here.
Jan Meek,
Here.
Carly Stone.
Here.
Diane Zidane.
Here.
Dr. Carl Heydrich.
Here.
Steve, you all stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. First up, we have the superintendent report from Dr. Heydrich.
Yes, thank you. And we'll start off with Diane to cover the introduction of 2 new employees. We do have the motion item later in the agenda as well.
So maybe, okay, Paige and Lauren, if you could show your faces. Okay, thank you. So we were just so thrilled to be able to hire 2 new people to fill some openings. We have Lauren Ryder. Lauren, raise your hand, Lauren. There you go.
Hi, Lauren.
She's our new speech and language therapist. She recently was working St. Clair Shores, is that right?
In Roseville.
Roseville, okay, I knew it was on
That's
the
close.
east side of town, near me. And recently decided that drive was a little too much for her. She lives around us, and she started a couple weeks ago and already done a great job working with our preschool students and our middle school. And everyone's now getting what they need. It was really overwhelming. We had lots of students. We didn't lose the students that we thought we might, and so that's why we sort of needed to hire. And so Laura, maybe you can share where some other background you've had.
Sure. I'm a speech language pathologist with 4 years of experience working in the schools. I have really enjoyed my time so far in Brandon just these last couple weeks. I'm excited about all the things that the special education department stands for, including inclusion and independence and self-advocacy for the students. And I'm very excited to get working with our preschool and middle school students, which is 2 different worlds, but working in the early intervention and also helping our older students with their functional and vocational skills.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
And then Paige Anderson is sort of new to our state. She had come from, I believe it was Indiana, and started working in Pontiac during all this COVID, switching jobs. And I'm stealing her from Pontiac, sorry. They steal from us, we steal what we do around
You
here.
gotta do what you gotta do, right?
Right, thank you, yeah. And Paige comes with some great experience with lots of different students. And so maybe you can share some of your background, Paige.
Yeah, I've always lived in Michigan, but I was at Grand Valley. So yeah, I lived in Grand Rapids for the past like 6 or 7 years, and I went to Grand Valley. So I got my bachelor's in special education for students with emotional impairments, and then I went and got my master's for students with learning disabilities. And spent my first 2 years teaching in Grand Rapids, and I taught first grade, which was very different than what I went to school with, but I loved it. But then I moved back to the east side. I'm getting married in May. I was supposed to get married in June, but we won't talk about that. But I am super excited to start at Brandon and just to get to know everybody and get to know the students. So yeah, I'm really excited.
And she'll be working at Harvey Swanson.
Yeah.
Replacing a teacher that left.
And welcome. Both of you, you're gonna love it over here.
Thank
We're
you.
a great district
Thank you.
and great community.
That's awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next I have a COVID-19 update.
Yes, okay. I did share spreadsheets with you. This, for anybody in the public, this spreadsheet that we're looking at is the same one that's online under the COVID-19 dashboard for the district. And to date on October 15th, we've had 6 students that have tested positive. Since October 15th, we've had 7 staff members across the district. I just want to talk just briefly about a current uptick in cases. We had a probable case today at the middle school. A staff member at high school test positive in 2 children, one in early childhood and one in a lower elementary at Harvey Swanson test positive. And we also have some quarantine issues and transportation with some employees. So we definitely have an increase if we look at the span from October 15th to November 16th today. Walking in this position, I just appreciate the district's efforts, what you've done with mitigation strategies and protocols, second to none. From central office to administration to the community and parents. I just appreciate, very proud of the work that's being done in the district to keep staff and students safe. And that's what it's all about. And to have in-person learning, because we know that in-person learning is the best way to learn for a lot of our kids. And some that choose virtual, they're doing good, very well as well. I did talk to the health department. One of the issues is to keep pre-K 8 in-person learning going is to consult with your health department. I've done that. They're not going to direct schools to close or open, but as long as we can, as long as we don't have in-district transmission or building transmission of the virus going on, which we don't in any of our buildings to date, we're able to isolate these cases and quarantine the amount of students or staff. And we do not have any evidence of in-district or building ongoing transmission at this point. That's really key. The other caution out there for, can we continue to operate in person, PK8 is looking at operations from an employee shortage standpoint. And so that if we need to have our employees available so we can operate in-person learning. And so far we're doing okay. We've been to the edge a couple times with some shortages, but we're managing it day to day. But as I said, we do have a little bit of an uptick in cases here on Monday. As far as the region, looking at the Brandon School District and community spread, we do have some community spread. If I'm looking at the cases from 10/29 to November 11th, the case count is at 87. We should get an update. Those are current cases in the district, and we should have that updated very soon. And so I'll open up the discussion.
Has anybody got a question for Dr. Heydrich? My understanding is, obviously, we all know, starting Wednesday, the high school will be closed until December 8th. Right now is the anticipated date that our high schoolers and staff will come back there.
That's right.
So now we have the middle school, Harvey Swanson and Oakwood. That is a decision for us. And again, we could talk about it, then listen to public comment, then give him direction. Or we could, I don't know if anybody feels at least something that they want to say, or do you want me to see if I can get some public, maybe minimum, come talk just about this only, if there is anybody? With board members.
I have a clarifying question, just to understand the county's position across a couple weeks' time. Today is the 16th, right?
Yes.
Yes. And we had a letter from Oakland County Health Department dated the 4th, I believe. Everybody correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But it was dated the 4th, where it said basically that, I'm grossly summarizing, but basically that the uptick that the county is experiencing is not due to in-school transmission, that it was due to social gatherings.
That's right.
And that it went on, and I can picture it, right? In the lower portion of the letter, it referenced in like 3 or 4 bullet points, if you are currently if you have a face-to-face option in your school currently being attended. And then the next bullet point was, if you plan on going face-to-face after not being in face-to-face, then it went on.
Mm-hmm.
And in each instance, it basically said, keep doing what you plan on doing, provided you're following the safety protocols that you intended, that you've presented and are representing that you're following. So given your, sorry for that, that was for the benefit of life out there. So from November 4th, and given we're now 12 days later, the advice, as I understand it through an independent conversation with the county as well, is that they're basically continuing with that message through today, despite what we're seeing, as a state overall, despite the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services announcement last night. Was it just last night?
Yes,
It was about 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
But so we're getting that message over the span of a very important period of time, I'd suggest, has continued to be the same. And I'm pointing that out, one, to ask confirmation. Is that the same thing, pretty much what you're hearing, given your conversation with the health department, with the caveats that you shared?
Yeah, I mean, my conversation with our local health department is that things are deteriorating a bit for hospitals, and but the message on in-district building transmission is very, very low at this point. But community spread is increasing dramatically.
Right.
So that's the difference. So, we ask the question, are our kids safer at school? And they probably are, because that transmission is not there right now.
Less exposure.
And so with our safety protocols. But long-term, as these conditions may deteriorate, we could have more community spread and the potential for higher risk than what we currently have in schools. But right now, for the Brandon School District, we don't have that evidence of in-building or in-district spread. So the health department is not going to direct us to open or close.
Correct.
They're going to look at your safety protocols and see if you can still manage it. And as the MDHSS said last night, part of their planning was that it's a local decision in conjunction with the health department to remain open for PK8. And so if we have these mitigation strategies and these protocols in place and we're doing okay, then we potentially could keep moving forward on PK8 instruction. However, I think if that's the case, I think you need to reevaluate that periodically, maybe even weekly, because these conditions change so rapidly.
Right.
And so I have a little bit of data for Monday. Well, what's the rest of the week look like? Is it similar to Monday? And if so, could that be evaluated periodically? So
I think it would be smart for us to keep closer tabs on it on a week-to-week basis, for sure.
Yeah, I should say minimum, we do a week to week unless there is some spike or uptick that we would maybe be called to emergency meeting.
Yep.
If we decision if the suggestion is that we stay status quo with our pre-K to 8. I totally agree, because this is like one moment you think things are somewhat okay, and within 12 days, we're shutting down the high school.
And that's where, in my mind, I didn't want to be giving improper weight to something I saw in writing.
Right.
Given what's transpired, over 12 days, and then last night's announcement. The other thing is I think we all are aware, and our community needs to be aware, that if it's the chosen approach to continue with our face-to-face option in our lower grades, that if operationally we're simply not able to open a school on a certain day, or schools, or for a couple days in a row, that's a decision that we may not be able to make, our administration may not be able to make until a 5 a.m., decision pivot point of that day, like a snow day. And with that, there's probably going to be some frustrations, and I would personally recognize those frustrations. That's always tough to deal with. A last minute, scheduling issue like that can be very, very frustrating. But that's kind of the mindset we need to be in, I'd suggest, is that we have it's a day-to-day, recognize that we're going to be visiting it week to week. But from an operational standpoint, to me, that's more of a day-to-day, because there can be no planning for that sometimes.
Yeah.
So that's got to be on the table for everybody's thoughts.
So I have a question on that, just for clarification, because we have certain requirements as far as 180 days and makeup days. Would some buildings have to make up days? And would we be able to use snow days for those? Like, how would that, we would have to figure out those logistics. Because you're right, there may be like 5 a.m., we're closing the middle school down and we have to do it, but how would that be interpreted in the back end? Because we have those 180-day mandates and requirements that we have to do, as a district. So that's another.
Yeah, well, generally, I think we'd be okay, because if we have to move from in-person to virtual, the staff has 2 days of preparation, and they also have obligation to do asynchronous learning, which should count towards 180 days.
Okay.
So I think we're going to be okay there. But it's a great question, because accounting for student count is just been very different this year for all of our students.
Right. I think that though, remaining active on the day-to-day decisioning is important, because it keeps our students safe and it also keeps our teachers safe, right? I mean, I want to be clear that we can't do this without our teaching staff, right?
Amen.
So I think having that mindset going forward is important for both.
And I think to piggyback off a little bit of what was said, and again, it's more of, I guess, an announcement to the parents, especially those with the kids that can't be left unsupervised at their house.
Yeah.
We don't know the way this is going to go. And if we have to do, because COVID is taking over, you just have to start those preparations now, if not quicker and sooner, depending on what the decision's gonna be for direction for Dr. Hydrick. But Anybody got anything else that they want?
I just want to say something. I just want to thank all of the community members, the parents, the staff, all of them that took the time to send us emails, to call, to be positive with their expressions and their feelings in that. That was, for me, to hear the pulse of our parents and our teachers and our community. That was important coming into this meeting. So I just want to give a shout out to our community and our parents because they care. A lot of nice things were said about, our district and our staff. And so for me, as a parent with kids that, are affected by this, that spoke volumes. So I just wanted to take a couple seconds to say thank you to them because that says a lot about our district.
Amen. I agree.
There's numerous emails
Numerous,
and calls, numerous emails and calls today.
Yes.
Good point, Melissa.
Very appreciative of it.
Go ahead, Diane.
Well, I was involved with the, notifying parents whose children begged to be quarantined today. And it was just, everyone was very pleasant. They were upset, but they were like, oh, got it. Okay, thanks. Right now, everyone reacted in, what I would say is appropriate, like surprised, unhappy, but realizing that I'm glad you called me and okay, we're gonna do what we have to do. And I'm just so thankful that everyone's so supportive. Because that's what's keeping us all safe. Parents being honest, not sending their kids. As soon as you get a call that someone has a symptom, they come and pick them up. Kids are getting tested. It's just wonderful. And that's the only way we can keep going, is that we have to keep to work as a team.
Great point.
Collective approach is
Yeah.
so
I just,
important.
I'm concerned and I'm concerned on so many things, so many fronts, as we all are. I personally, while I understand there's so many considerations, as long as we can move forward safely and we can, in accordance with our plan, and we can, as we've set out, and Dr. Heydrich, acknowledged early in the conversation, that everybody is doing such a diligent job of complying with that. It's so appreciated. I think that for me, on balance right now, that could, change with numbers by next Monday. The value of in-person teaching, I would never use it to shadow or rely on it to shadow safety concerns when we're at that front. But I think that the value really, we really need to march forward for now, given the value of in-person teaching, especially for these grades.
100%.
And that's my opinion at this point. I'm always open for more discussion. I look forward to comments that our attendees may have, but I am concerned. I'm concerned for our high schoolers. I'm concerned, I'm not saying it's not a comment, it's not a political comment of agreeing or disagreeing with the announcement made by our government last night. It's an expression, a personal expression as a parent, as in a board member. I'm greatly concerned about our high schoolers and the effect.
I'm glad that you brought that up because I'd like to know if there's any, what are our, I know what our plans are, right, for the next 3 weeks. But are there any opportunities for us to increase our touch to our students at the high school level? You just don't know, right? You just don't know with teenagers and you don't know what every family's going through. And we can't possibly, that's, I know. But I think the more frequent an opportunity that we create for outreach and accountability to the students, right? Because a lot of kids are gonna look at this like, I hated it in the spring, I'm checking out.
Yep.
And you can have the best parents out there, but I know this is cliche, but it does take a village and it's more than sometimes what, parents just automatically have access to, and that's where we come in. So I know we have good plans in place, but I'd like us to consider it from the social emotional standpoint a little harder.
I will definitely add that to our list for discussion.
And I have to say for me, been my pulse, is listening to what the community, and like I say community, but really what the parents have said from the beginning that goes back to this summer. But I've also said I will, in a heartbeat, change my mind depending on the data that's coming in for here in our community and in our school buildings. That's the number one. If we're able to maintain and keep, great. But if things shift, I think I think this board is prepared to recommend and support a shift to everybody virtual if that's what needs to be done. I believe that. So
Fluid, it has to be fluid, and we need to be able to be nimble and recognize and adjust. And I think that our agility, our ability to be nimble is what, realizing there were challenges in the spring, no question, hands down. But in contrast to, I should say in contrast, by comparison, in conversations I had with people who had experiences in other districts, I think that really was in our favor, our size and our ability to be nimble.
I can speak to that myself, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think I mentioned that when I interviewed for this appointment, right? My kids were in different schools, and I was in a very unique position to watch how Brandon handled everything. I still got all the communications like I was a parent, so. But I got to see how we stacked up, and I'm gonna tell you that agility, that is our
Strength.
That is our biggest strength, I think. We listen to the community, we listen to the data, and we make our decisions from there. So I just wanted to chime in on that.
No, exactly, and all the more reason to rely on that on our daily analysis to ensure safety, ensure engagement.
do we want to see if somebody, do you think you want to do snow days?
Yeah, snow days is a lighter note.
Then we're gonna come back to confirm that he knows direction after public comment.
Generally, if you go back in the summer, there was some legislation, never made it all the way to the top, of course, to allow, but to have only 2 snow days or inclement days, and the other ones they're discussing moving to virtual. But there isn't much normalcy left in this school year for parents and communities and students. And so, it's my recommendation to confirm that we have snow days for both in-person and virtual students as normal for this year. Now, this could come into play if we start running over the 6 days. And you talk about making up school, and it might be something that we talk to the union about, but consider going to all virtual for an inclement weather day. But generally, I think for consistency across the district and across our staff and across the community, that we just keep the traditional snow days.
Yeah, I'm good. Yes.
Well, I just say, I'm going to buck the system. I'm a little bit, because I'm thinking, if we're all virtual and we can do it, I'm with the consistency of the learning continuing. But I'm gonna throw that out. I understand that if
I'm all for a mental health day.
So it's no, and I thought,
But so here's the thing too,
Wait, hold
like,
on, I don't think she
sorry,
finished.
I'm sorry. Sorry.
I just don't want to lose the learning. This is a difficult year for teaching. And are our kids getting it? And do we want to take advantage of having those extra days? I call them extra days, but I'm just throwing it out there that, especially those that are virtual, do we really want to have them to have that day off based upon how a virtual day goes? But I'm throwing that out to those with their kids.
I think that would be good feedback to have from people who are in the virtual environment. I think that would be really good feedback.
Yeah.
I'm saying, okay, so I want to clarify my position a little bit. When I was a parent of young children, snow days drove me crazy because it was the daycare scramble. But I think that the mental health day of it in this environment may outweigh that. So I don't think we're going to lose a lot of instruction on a given snow day. We only have 6 a year anyway at max.
That's correct, yeah.
And historically, I mean, we've had a couple of bad years there.
There was a couple
But
bad years.
I don't know, I don't.
Yeah, we came very close. We had to,
Extend the
We
school
did,
year, right?
yeah.
Yeah, you have to, at some point, you have to make up some.
Yeah.
Yeah, they give you a couple more emergency days, and sometimes if you apply for them. And you have to look at your clock hours, that you might even be over enough that you may not have to make up a day.
Right.
But generally, I think maybe this is a blend of everyone's thoughts, is that, yes, we can move forward towards the traditional snow day for in-person virtual learning. However, we need to be forward-thinking about the idea of virtual learning. At some point, this is going to be a factor down the road. And maybe if you start going over, you get towards 5, 6, we have to consider that, or we just would have to.
And can I, go ahead.
Sorry, I just have a question because it goes back to my mandatory days and that. Could you, it goes along with your bucking the system. So if, I'm just thinking out loud, if we have those days and make them online virtual, can we utilize those snow days for building closures? So let's say it's a 5 a.m.
It's just a pool.
Yeah,
You're
it's a
asking
pool,
me
like
for
just a,
big
yeah, it's a pool, like, let's say it's a
numbers,
5 a.m.
apply them.
day and it's gonna
That's a
be,
good
it's gonna be
thought.
impossible to do it. Are we able to utilize that pool, thank you, that.
There might be some flexibility in there. Again, it would come down to, what does the auditor of attendance say?
Right,
And what qualifying was. But, I could dig into it a little bit.
yeah, I just would like to see if that pool is possible, then you could do virtual, but if there's no way we can spin up something that day for whatever reason, then could we pull from that pool kind of thing? I just would like to see, I don't know what that looks like, but I just.
Right. So I might not be thinking clearly, but when a snow day happens, right? It's at
Yes.
5 a.m., snowed all night. Yes, sort of call. But for our teachers,
Yes.
we can't really count it if the suggestion is that my kids are all face-to-face, okay? Let's say we're fortunate enough to go back to face-to-face, at least for purposes of my house, that's fortunate. And it's the middle of February and they're in face-to-face and it's a Tuesday. We're not suggesting that all their teachers would need to be up and ready to go with an online program for that Tuesday when they get a call at 5.
We are setting precedent for that, and I'll tell you, we went to a school that adopted that once, I would say my kids were in 3rd and 4th grade, 4th and 5th grade. That's just as rough as doing the daycare scramble, right? When you have a snow day, right? Because as a parent now I have to plug in.
Right, but I think also for the teachers, they're always gonna have to anticipate,
Yeah.
I'm a face-to-face teacher.
And for the teachers,
And yet I
yeah.
need to plan for the snow day where I'm expected to have a full curriculum for my crowd, for my chicks
Just in case.
who are there, just in case we have a snow day. So the minute the first snowflake hits the ground, I gotta be ready because until, it's Michigan, so the beginning of June, I gotta
And
be
we all know
ready.
that there's an instructional design shift that has to happen when we go from face-to-face to
Yeah.
virtual, right?
I'm not
And
sure we
that's-
can ask them to turn it on and off.
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
don't, that's the complexity, you're both bringing up the complexities of this,
Yeah.
is why that I think we need a little bit more time, maybe this year, to try to just keep it normal. And then take all these thoughts and start to work on, because there are some complexities here with the staff and the timing, if do you call a snow day in the evening or you call it in the morning, there's a lot of complexities with it. But I certainly, will ask the union to weigh in a bit and see their thoughts.
Yeah.
So.
No, I'm interested to know the pool question because how we can apply our days may inform what we, some decision making. But I guess all this discussion, I believe, in summary, despite our, buck the system, I think is, forgive me for saying so, but generally in support of your suggestion with some caveats. Is that a safe?
I was gonna say, listening to everything, I was not about, that I was against being
course.
consistent and
Yeah.
doing what we've always sort of done.
Yeah.
And now that I even listened to it, this year is already, I don't want to use the word messed up, but it gets messed up very quickly and easily. And having some known consistency is very good. I was just going back to the whole thought, I don't the days of learning have become
Right.
now, I think, important.
Of
But I think our teachers do know that. And I
Yes,
think
of course.
it's getting, just not forgetting about that, that we'll see the way this, I'm all for staying with the consistency.
Mhm.
And when we do get close to the 5-6 days, that we need to have some readjustment thought, so we don't lose our days of learning.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
Yeah.
My
Make
hesitancy
updates,
is to ask our staff
Yeah.
to be at the ready all the time, for this unknown day. So who knows in the day of the stage of their curriculum and their lesson planning, will they need to turn it into so I know they need to be prepared. I know all of our staff is prepared at any time to go online as it stands. So I get that, but this is a little different for that face-to-face
I
fear.
agree.
So
And the
Yeah.
other thing too, can I just say one thing? I've said this in the past, in our last meeting, like I hope that there are good things that we can take away from virtual learning. And so I don't want to encroach on that option, right? I want us to get, I hope we can get to a point where we're through this and then we can say what went right, what was a good thing and what makes sense. I think if we, sticking to the traditional approach might be the best for right now, so that we can get to the point where we truly blend, right, the best.
I think with everything else, I agree 100%.
Yep.
And I think like everything else, it's going to require the revisiting, like Diane
Yeah,
suggested.
yeah, for
And
sure.
where are we with days and what does our staff want, as far as, and what can we do as far as that pool of days, and it has yet to be determined, but.
I agree.
So I was thinking, and just hearing all your thoughts, appreciated that, at some point here, we're going to get a storm, I'm sure, before
Yeah.
in the next 3 or 4 weeks. So I was just sent out a communication, just confirming virtual and in-person now for the 6 days, and we have to take a look at this.
And the last time we had this issue, Jan reported how great we were doing with the buildings, and then next thing you know, we had 3 snow days. So Jan's not to report the weather.
I'll stay quiet.
Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion on that?
No, that's it.
Okay, we are going to go to public comments and questions on agenda business. And again, when we get these, we want you to raise your hand on the virtual. Please have your name there so that Maria can call on you. And if I could say to our community parents and those that are listening in, we recognize the value of public comments and the importance of expressing yourselves to us on district matters. But here are some guidelines. Please recognize yourself by stating your name, address, and group affiliation, if any. Each statement will be limited to 3 minutes. The statements shall be directed at the board only. Generally, the board will not respond to public comments during the meeting. To ensure due process and respect of individual rights, the district maintains a formal process for handling complaints against individuals. A problem involving an individual or specific incident is best handled through the administrative channels. Such matters should be reduced to writing and sent to Dr. Heydrich or to me, the board president. Speakers are asked to express themselves in a civil manner with due respect for the dignity and privacy of others who may be affected by your comments. While it is not our intent to stifle public comment, speakers should be aware that if your statements violate the rights of others under the law of defamation or invasion of privacy, you may be held legally responsible. If you're unsure of the legal ramifications of what you are about to say, we urge you to consult first with your legal advisor. And again, the board does want to hear what people want to say to us. We just expect each speaker to model for our students and others in our audience on how we can respectfully disagree with others' views or voice an opinion or ask a question. Maria, does anybody have their hand up?
Yes, I have 3 participants raised hand.
Okay, go ahead.
So I will over to the attendees and see who I have.
I'm told we have 3 hands up.
That's what we all feel like.
Okay, so I will have Andrea Noker allow her to talk.
Andrea
Correct.
Noker?
And-
Andrea Noker. Andrea, you're coming on board. Can you hear us, Andrea?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Okay. Yes, we can hear
Hi.
you now. Go ahead, Andrea.
Thank you for having me. I'm representing the BEA as the BEA president. And I just want to thank the board for offering to revisit the whole COVID debacle weekly. I think that it's really important that we keep revisiting it. I sent out a survey to my K-8 staff today, and you know, it was about 50-50 of the elementary teachers who felt safe and didn't feel safe. And at the middle school, it was 70% do not feel safe and 30% are still okay. One of the major concerns we have with the spreadsheet that is updating COVID cases is it's not very accurate. Right now, there are 2 other Harvey Swanson teachers that are not even on that spreadsheet. There are several classroom assistants that are not on the spreadsheet. We have students that we know of that parents have tested positive, but the kids are still coming to school. We've had kids who have just been absent and they're not on the spreadsheet at all. So we're very concerned about how the spreadsheet is being updated, who is responsible for it. So although I teach kindergarten and I don't want to have to teach kindergarten online, I do have to speak for my staff as a whole, and I have to let you know their concerns. Right now, there are still concerns over classrooms where students are not 6 feet apart. And that, along with the community spread that is going on and all the schools around us have now closed down, has heightened everybody's anxieties. So I just want to, first of all, thank you for revisiting it, but I also want to let you know our feelings. And I also want to make you aware that the MEA is also advocating that K-8 go online.
Andrea, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you for all you do in the teachers, or for the teachers. Who do we have next?
Sean Van Slambrook.
Sean, you're up next. Can you hear us? Sean? Can you hear us, Sean? I don't know if you're, we see your name, but I can't tell if you're on mute or not.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Go ahead. Yep. The floor
I
is-
must have, I'm so sorry. I must have accidentally rose my hand.
Oh, well, okay, well, welcome. Next time, maybe you'll have something to say. Thank you for being part of this.
Louis Monatelli.
What's the name?
Louis.
Louis, you're up. Louis, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Go ahead, you got the floor.
All right, thank you. So I'm a parent of a student at Harvey Swanson. I just wanted to make a comment that I appreciate a lot of the board's comments about COVID-19 and the K through 8 and staying in school. I think the kids are safer in school as they're wearing masks 100% of the time. If they have to go virtual, I know a lot of them may have to go to childcare where they'd be around the same kids anyway. So I appreciate the schools, what they're doing with the masks and cleaning and everything. I think the kids are safer. So, and I agree that in school is a lot more effective for the kids learning. I worry that if my daughter has to go virtual, it would affect her learning. And I supported the comment, I'm not sure who made it, about being worried about high schoolers going virtual and checking out. So I just wanted to say, I support the decision. I'm glad that the kids are staying in school from my standpoint. And that's about it.
Thank you, Louis. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
I think we have one more hand.
I have two.
Two more hands. Got two more hands.
Dana Diploma.
Dana, can you hear us? Hello, Dana, you're up. Dana, you on mute?
Dana,
Hello, Dana.
she has on mute.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Welcome, Dana.
Okay.
Sure.
Hello. I just first wanted to say about the snow days. I have one child who is home and I have another child who goes one day and stays home one day. They're on the hybrid at the high school. I just feel right now with some students being virtual, but Brandon teachers, it might be good if you allow the virtual kids to have a snow day too. You'll end up with some families having kids in school and some not in school. I think for consistency, plus which block gets missed of a snow day, would you then do that block next day? And if the kids are doing virtual home that day, I just think it could be a mess. So hopefully when snow days come, you keep the in-person and virtual doing the same. And then I just wanted to mention about the cases, being that I'm talking now as a parent and as a community member and as a trustee for the township. I watch the cases daily to see what's going on in our township. And in the past month, we have 125 cases. In the past, since it started, we were at 235. That means that 53% of our cases have been in the past month. I just hope you guys keep an eye on that too, because that maybe the spread is not within the district, but the spread is definitely been increased in our township, which means just being out and about within our township is not as safe, I feel like, as it was before. So that is something we need to watch, is the community numbers too.
Thank you, Dana. Appreciate it. Well said.
I have Rebecca Haynes.
Rebecca Haynes, you're up. Can you hear us, Rebecca?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Welcome. You've got the floor.
I just wanted to make a couple comments. First, I wanted to thank Lisa for bringing up, just talking about how important the face-to-face is, and just kind of touching on the fact that it needs to be without sacrificing the safety of anyone, teachers or students. And I just think looking at the amount of parents that chose to enroll their kids face-to-face for this school year, and those that actually chose to have them come back. Today was the first day for those that chose to come back, the second card marking. I think that is just tells us that these parents, if we can do face-to-face, want it. With that said, obviously, the safety in the classrooms and making sure that we're able to abide by the guidelines is extremely important also. So, I just love that Brandon is forging through and doing something that other districts haven't been able to. And I hope that we can continue to do that safely.
Thank you, Rebecca. Appreciate it. Is there any other hands that came up or up?
Yes, there was one.
Oh, we got another hand.
Let's see. We have taken it down.
Okay,
Yeah. I do not have any more.
We do not see any more.
There is one. Do you want to take?
Yeah, go ahead. Who is that?
Amanda Williams.
Amanda Williams, come aboard. I'll make sure she's on. Amanda, can you hear us? Oh. Hold on, Amanda. We're trying to bring you up.
Using an older version.
Amanda? Oh. There you are.
I thought it cut off. I was like, no.
There you go. You did, but we weren't sure. I think it was at our end, Amanda. Welcome aboard.
Okay. That's okay. So I am very for in person, and I am not at the same time. obviously there's many reasons, but how can we guarantee that there's no spread or transmissions with people being asymptomatic? And that's assuming that not everyone is going to get tested.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. And there is no guarantee that if you have an asymptomatic person in any of our buildings or out in the community, that you don't have transmission. I mean, to say there's absolutely 0% of in-district or building transmission, we know it's very, very low, but we can't say it's absolutely 0%. And I know the asymptomatic cases that may arise in the community or school district, that's definitely a part of this. So, but generally we're as safe as possible.
And that brings another concern. And I have a elementary school student that is enrolled face-to-face, and I also have a middle school student that is enrolled virtual. And we did have struggles in middle school with being isolated, and that made me weigh, you know, is it safer for him mentally to be isolated or be going to school and socializing, or is it safer to keep him at home learning and knowing that he is safe? That obviously is one situation we've been handling. And then I have the elementary school student who I am worried about when I come to the school and I pick him up outside and he has left his mask and his desk in the classroom. And this isn't one occurrence. And I know you guys have so much on your hands. I know you guys are working tirelessly. I understand and I appreciate that. But there are still concerns with the safety.
Thank you, Amanda. Appreciate it. Thank you.
More hands raised?
3 more?
No, I have none.
Okay, we got none. Okay, if we got a moment, then the board, I feel, and again, I'll start the conversation based upon what we know today for our pre-K through 8. I'm comfortable keeping them open as is with the in-person numbers and with the virtual numbers, with the idea that we revisit this if anything happens, and for sure, we revisit this Monday, a week from today.
2 comments. I'm supportive of continuing with our plan, meaning no action item by the board. It's just our counsel to Dr. Hybrid. I think that it's imperative, as you suggested at the top of the meeting, that we revisit this at least once a week. I'm sure we as a group revisit it once a week. I know the administration and everybody will be revisiting it minute by minute, basically. I am concerned with wanting to make sure that, and this isn't pointing fingers at anybody or anyone, or it's just a comment. Obviously, toward Andrea's point, the spreadsheet needs to be up to date if that's the data that we're working off of. I know that there's different reporting and how that all happens is a story, beyond this table, but just, appreciate that being identified to the extent we need to pay attention to that. I also have a question, and this may not be possible, but if our high school, or since our high school face-to-face is on pause for 3 weeks, are there any resources that we can take that would typically be used at the high school and move them on over? And I'm sure this is something that's already being considered, but just brainstorming and having those resources, whether it's janitorial staff or something I would never be able to think of myself, that would move over and can help in the other buildings during this time, and get us through.
It may help us out, and it's a great question.
I mean, it's more people in the school, but yet they're doing something.
Some of our personnel
right.
May have an opportunity where there's a good match to help out. And then most of the personnel will just follow along with the online learning with the high schoolers. But there could be some opportunities in some areas where that would work.
Right, and respecting that everybody's still gonna be very busy. I'm not suggesting that. I was thinking even more along the line of support.
It's
Maybe not teachers themselves, because they're gonna be busy with their hands full.
It's definitely can't hurt us. It's only going to help us.
Mhm.
Sense.
So in summary, you know, with that, those questions and comments, and revisiting routinely, making sure our data is as tight as we can make it, I support continuing on with face-to-face.
Melissa?
I support continuing face-to-face as well. Just looking at the numbers of kids that came back, the larger numbers are in our JK through 8. So that tells me that our community, our parents recognize that the face-to-face learning is important. That they've tried the virtual and they need to try it face-to-face. And having a child who had a anxiety-stricken meltdown yesterday at the thought of going to virtual, and as I quote, "Mom, I can't go back to that." And we did have depression and we did have some isolation issues that we had to deal with in March. And I'm perfectly comfortable stating that because it's a reality that she's not the only one that was affected by it. So it's different variables. So as a parent, as a board member, again, with the understanding that we are going to look at this weekly and do what's best safety-wise in all measures, I think that had we not heard the governor speak yesterday, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. So we are making strides here. We have been safe. We have been doing our administration, our teachers, our staff has all been doing an excellent job. And I like to stay the course with the understanding of checking in and you know, making the right decision, you know, as it comes presented to us.
Jim?
So I'm in support of staying face-to-face, continuing on. I think we've done some great things. I feel like we have an urgent need to get to the bottom of any discrepancies that are noted on the spreadsheet and reporting. I know we're all doing the best we can, but to have that come from our teachers, we have to take that seriously, and that has to be an urgent resolution. So I don't know, but it's got to be investigated. And I'm hoping that by Monday we can have some clarity around some of the feedback that we got from Andrea and some of that inconsistency.
And I will ensure that, you know, we'll take a look at it and communicate with the union those differences. And then we'll update you on Monday as to what the latest is.
Thank you. Marianne?
So as far as, I'm in support of continuation also, but for the revisiting on a weekly basis, do we have to have a formal meeting for that, or can that be, how would that be conducted, and how do we assert or change course formally?
I think that should be formal. I think this is serious enough that this should be formal, and it could be brief. I think that the only thing that could I think of that could stall it a little more if there are no changes or it gets better. But I really think we should expect to meet briefly on Monday, a week from today. And if those that can't come in person, you know, I told them to send out some times that we can at least meet, or you can meet in virtually like John is, like Kim has done, you know, Kevin. So I think this should be formal because this is serious enough a decision. And if the information even that day changes, we may have to make that then into an action item at that moment. But
I think that's two things for me. I think it needs to be formal because I treasure my board members. I don't say that to be all cheesy. I treasure my board members and the administration and the cabinet's input. And, you know, if it's an open meeting, we've got public, you know, comments, that there's always something to take away and inform, whether it's a decision made tonight or it might inform, it's part of an evolution, right? And I tuck that away, and it's part of the experience and knowledge base that goes into being a thoughtful, engaged board member, as all of you are. And so that's very important to my decision-making and my analysis. And also, I think that, I guess I'm just hopping on what you said there, that if we actually do need to, things are urgent enough, we want to be able to act. And to have the formal meeting means we could act. If we do it informally, then we're left with scheduling and trying to approve. So, and I know there's ways of getting around that, but why not just be at the ready given the importance?
Yep, transparent.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Ready at a moment's notice.
Absolutely. John, do you have any comments? Or
Support, I'm in support the face-to-face learning right now. And then just let me know Monday when we can meet and I'll be there.
thank you. And if I could just before you got to heard from every board member, what has become important is what Andrea Noker said, and coming from our teachers. That's got to be identified, straightened out, cleaned up. We can't happen. I also have to say is what other people are reporting in the cooperation of those kids, parents, teachers, staff. That's what's keeping the numbers down. And I gotta tell you, we are on the brink of being able to shut things down. So how important moving forward is right now in wearing your mask and going by the guidelines that have been given, the washing of your hands, keeping the distance away. We may have to reset and remeasure some of those desks. That's going to be so important now moving forward more than ever, and to keep our kids.
Yeah, you brought up something, I think Andrea said that, measuring the desks and making sure that there's 6 feet. We need to maybe revisit our quality protocols for how frequently are we checking and what are we doing. I don't want to hear that again.
Yeah.
Like, I can't.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is definitely within our control at some level, and so we got to get that done.
Yeah, we're appropriate in a normal classroom. Yeah. And I also, I'm also interested in the survey that we gave out. So I'll try to get a copy of that as well.
Yeah, I would like to see the questions asked and how things were phrased and the correlating responses.
Yeah.
Because that's important. That's important that we have that
And if we
information.
have teachers, if we have, 70% that aren't feeling safe, we need some quantitative feedback so that we can try to
Figure that
resolve
out.
some of it.
Yeah.
Try to
So
mitigate some
I
of
will
it.
try, I'm sure Andrew will share that with me. And I can give that to you for next month.
Perfect.
That'll be, I know it's all rushed, for in light of everything, and so we couldn't have it for tonight's meeting, but that would be lovely to have that information for sure. And I do think, the desk situation is tough because unless they're nailed to the floor, or if we have marks, that, the tape, that they stick between. I mean, I'm not complaining whatsoever, but coming from a family where we had a quarantine due to a 5-inch shortage on a distance of a desk because it had been moved, and nobody knows who moved it. It doesn't matter who moved it.
It doesn't
That's
matter
not the
who,
point.
yeah.
It just was moved, and that's what happens in hustle bustle. So how do we? I raised that only to share that I come from a place of knowing, and that's good. We were supportive. We said, okay, what do we do? It was all good, but it did raise as is a theme of how do we consistently ensure, with little ones in particular that are scooting and doing everything that we have our best practices in place. I'm confident we do. Do we just need a refresher?
It's that reliable, quality check,
Right. And it's not that anybody's doing anything wrong. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with, it's just a odd time.
We just have to do it right. We just have to consistently have it right. So, okay, sounds good. I feel you got guidance.
Yep, so I'm gonna try to summarize from what I hear, is that we will continue with in-person K-8 instruction as normal. The board will do a next evaluation period on Monday, November 30th. And we'll schedule something where we can evaluate the data and the survey and clean up the spreadsheet and make sure it's up to date with everything. And talk about those inconsistencies of messaging between the teachers and us, make sure we're all on the same page. So the communication to parents, it might go out tonight, it may go out in the morning, it's probably likely to go out in the morning, it depends on the lateness of the board meeting. That I'll outline PK instruction as normal and outline the fact that the board will be evaluating the next evaluation period being November 30th. And I've also heard or 23rd. I'm sorry,
Yeah, it is
23rd.
23rd. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm a week, I'm 2 weeks out.
I didn't have my calendar.
Yeah. Thank you for correcting me.
No problem.
And then also heard it might be important to bullet point to parents that if we have in district or in building transmission, we could get closed at any time.
Yes.
And
Operationally,
we could close at any time. So I might bullet point that out as well in the letter, just so we're just aware that this could, any day, we could be closed, whether it be 5 a.m. or the night before, that possibility exists until that next evaluation period.
Yep.
Is that the summary I'm hearing
Yep.
from the board?
That's correct.
Yep.
Thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda, can I get a motion for the approval of the consent agenda as presented?
Move the Board of Education approve the consent agenda as presented. Support.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor, could I have a roll call vote, please?
Kimberly Smith Colaga. John Chartier,
Yes.
Melissa Clark approved. Marianne Dwyer. Support. Lisa Cavalluna. Support. Or yes. Kevin McClellan, is he on? I thought he was on. He was on.
I didn't see that.
Kevin. Diane Salter.
Yes. Okay, consent agenda is approved and as presented. Informational discussion items. First is the Board of Education report. I don't have any. I'm working on an onboarding for the new elected board members, and no, I do not know who number 4 is yet. I'm told maybe tomorrow, but we're not sure. Oakland, it's all in the hands of Oakland County. We don't have, to my knowledge, any poll or information. So that's really about it. And then next I have a finance report. That's Jan. You're up, Jan.
Yeah, hi, I don't have much. I did want to let you know that at the special board meeting, I will be presenting our first budget amendment. We have quite a few changes from June. So I'll be talking to you about that. Also wanted to let the board know, I did have some questions on the teacher and support staff grant. And we made a decision to send the grant application to every employee that qualified per the state. We decided not to pick and choose who we thought met the 3 criteria, which were working in a hazardous condition, spending extra money out of pocket, or spending extra time. So the process is going well. We reached out to employees who are no longer with us this year as well. And so we're on track to get that. We have a system in place and to make sure that everyone will be receiving their money in February.
Okay, thank you, Jan. Anybody got questions for Jan? Okay, having none, thanks, Jan. Next, we have the education report. Carly Stone, you're up.
Yes, I'm better at this. Okay. All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you for being patient with me. I get better at this the more we do it, I promise. I'm not going to take a lot of your time this evening, but I do want to keep that reoccurring theme of what have we been working on, what are we currently working on, or rather, what have we accomplished, what are we currently working on, and what are we looking forward to. So I really think it's super duper important, particularly in a year like this, that we stop to celebrate the good stuff because we're constantly dealing with challenges. And last week on Friday, we completed our first marking period. So we just finished a quarter of the school year, which is amazing. But I think that's a tremendous success and an accomplishment for all of us. The fact that we've been able to provide continuous in-person learning for our students during that time is remarkable. As you know, we do not have other folks in the county that are as fortunate as we. And so I think It's a tremendous celebration for us as a school district. And for those that are participating online rather than face-to-face, we have provided a very rich experience for those families through our Brand and Learn from Home program, as well as our Summit Virtual. So I think that's really, really important. We had an awesome day of professional learning with our teachers on November 3rd. We spent some time celebrating some of the small wins because they needed to feel that too, because they've been absolutely remarkable. We spent some time looking at some elementary math curriculum, focusing in on some literacy data at the elementary, particularly for our at-risk readers. And then in the for secondary folks, we started identifying students that we noticed are really struggling, and then talking about what might be some of those differentiation strategies we're going to consider, what are some of those actions we're going to put into place to ensure that we try to catch up as many students as possible. So that was how we spent our day on November 3rd. And lastly, I think this is a big one too. Last time when we met, I mentioned we have just under 100 families that were looking for a change in education plan for November. We were able to honor every person's wish. Some were a little more creative than others. It wasn't always super duper clean. But again, it's the creativity of our counseling staff, our building administrators, and just the excitement of the community. Most of those, about 90% of those 95 were coming back to our buildings. Just thrilled and really happy that we were able to fulfill that commitment we made to our community this summer, offering that choice, and just really remarkable. And it's been a team effort all the way around to make it happen, but I think that's a really big celebration for us as well. So what are we working on? When I saw you last, I mentioned I would mention our NWEA results for this fall. So the window closed at the end of October. And just as a reminder, NWEA is something that's been in practice here in Brandon for several years. It is a nationally normed assessment. When I took a peek at some recent statistics, it includes over 11 million students across the nation. So it's really a great tool to help guide us to see how do our students fare, not only locally, not just in the county and the state, but really across the nation. We have our students take it because it's individualized to what they know and can do. And so it gives us a really accurate read on how we can support our students as we work to fill gaps, particularly in the COVID-19 era. And then it causes us opportunities to really reflect and think about ways we can meet the needs of those students that are identified through the data. So what I have here is just our fall results. I think it's really unfair for us to compare this year to last year or this to the spring. I feel like this is a baseline right now. And so what I did do is take the percent of our students at each grade level that are either at the norm or above the norm. So what you're seeing here is the entry level of our elementary students in reading and mathematics. What percent of those students are currently performing at or above the norm in the nation? And these are norms that were generated in July of 2020, taking data from the past 3 to 5 years. So they're not going to have a direct correlation right now to COVID. However, research studies are currently being published how that is impacting these scores. But just to be honest and transparent, this is where we're falling right now at the elementary level. And you can see actually our kindergartners are coming in quite strong to us, which is really, really exciting. And then you can see here, this is at our secondary level. Again, this is looking at the percent of kids that are currently at that norm across the nation or above in both reading and mathematics. So the question is, now that we have this information for baseline data, what are we going to do? NWE has an amazing array of reports, one of which actually aligns directly to the Michigan State standards, and it identifies which students are missing what particular standards and where are their gaps, or where are they accelerating. And so our teachers, we spent time on November 3rd digging into some of that information, looking at where are we seeing pockets of students, where can we help fill in some of those gaps that we know are missing from the spring. It helps us determine specific areas of focus for the whole class as well. If we're seeing trends in most of our students, it helps us be thoughtful to how we present to our students in class. It provides individual growth targets for students, and it will then give us a comparison of progress from fall to spring. The state has required us to benchmark assess this year. As you know, NWEA is our way of doing that in the district. It is a part of our COVID plan that we've identified K-8, and we will be reporting out using this data from the fall. We will be comparing it to our spring data when we finish that test set at the very end of May. All right, so what are we looking forward to? Report cards are coming home on Friday. Woohoo! High school folks, those are actually going to be mailed home on Friday. The plan was for people to be in person, but recognizing that that changed last night, we have changed our plans. NWEA reports are also coming home on Friday for families as well. So we have the results, and the families are going to be able to see that information. Believe it or not, we get to be thankful next week for Thanksgiving. It's my favorite holiday. And then lastly, we are still bound by the legislation under Read Write Grade 3, in which we need to be communicating with families that we've identified being deficient in reading in grades K through 3. And our deadline to communicate that information to families as well as a plan of action is December 7th. So our teachers are currently crafting those plans for our students with support of our literacy coaches and our building administrators, and families can look forward to receiving those by December 7th. And then I just had to finish with a picture because sometimes it just feels good to see our kids. So this is from Jackie and Jackie at the middle school. These are some of our middle schoolers taking a nice break outside in the beautiful weather. So.
Thank you. Any questions for Carly?
Thanks for the.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yep, Jan or John, you have a question?
Yeah, I'd like to see this 6th grade reading again on that thing, if she could put it up for me again. If I saw it right, it was like at 49% and everybody else was over 50, correct?
You know, let me go back for you and make sure that I was thinking about it here. Hope I'm not making you dizzy.
That's
6th grade math, we're at 52% are currently at the norm or above, and then 49% in mathematics. So I also think that's a great observation, and I appreciate you pointing that out. I also think it's important to know, and COVID sure doesn't help, but those transition years are always tricky years. So when you're going from 5th to 6th or going from 8th to 9th, I was a former 6th grade teacher, and it's just a pattern. It's a trend that we see in education. I'm confident in the fact that we've had our students here already for 10 weeks, the bulk of our students in person, and that we have a very rich program, and we've been able to access this data, that we're going to really see an impact on this data over time as our teachers are being very thoughtful with their instruction.
Okay. All right, I just noticed that it seems like our 6th grade usually has a harder time, it seems like.
Yep. Yes, absolutely. Anybody else, any observations, anything outside of, I mean, it is what it is at this point, and we got a baseline.
We do.
Thank you, Carly.
Of course, thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda, we have our action items. Could I get a motion for the approval of the 8th grade out-of-state trip to Washington, D.C.?
Move the Brandon Board of Education approve the 8th grade out-of-state overnight trip to Washington, D.C., October 20th, 2021 to October 25th, 2021 as presented.
Support.
Okay, and I think we got Steve Hendershot, who organizes this every year. Steve, you there?
I don't think he's here.
Hold on, Steve, we're trying to find you.
Well, I had him as a participant. I put him on hold. He's not listed in my participant panelist group. No, he's not. I just did a search in there.
Okay, Steve, we don't see you here, but we can report that this is an excellent trip, not only for the group, but educationally. My only question is, was last year's canceled? Last year's May.
So this current year has been moved from, we were supposed to be in October, we have been moved to May.
Okay.
So we will be going, I believe it's the second week of May is when it's tentatively been rescheduled.
I couldn't remember, okay.
He's here. Hold on.
Hi, Steve. Hold on,
Hold on.
Steve, we're
know why he's not showing on there. He should be.
Steve, we're looking for you again.
Hold on here, Steve.
Actually, I think the 8th grade class trip is going to be at the same time as Police Week in DC.
Oh,
Wow. So those kids are gonna see, Police Week technically starts on Mother's Day, but the weekend festivities are like Thursday through like Saturday, where there's a lot of the
yeah.
memorial, things like that. So I'm not sure the timing of when they're leaving DC, but they should see police officers and first responders from all over the country and the world that come to this every year to honor all those officers that were killed the year before.
Lot of
Line of
honor
duty,
there.
so they may get to see something different, you know.
Yeah.
Then
It's an
there's
opportunity.
may get to see some fun.
Yeah. Oh, neat.
It's very cool to see.
I've always wanted to go. I just haven't. A good friend of ours, he does the Unity bike tour
Yep.
there. Yeah.
Everybody should do that at least once.
I agree.
It's a lot of fun. So I'm excited for them to maybe see some of that.
Sorry, Steve, we're not finding you and
I just sent you another invite, Steve.
because I know he was there.
Yeah, he was.
Typing I'm here.
You what?
He's typing I'm here.
I know, that's.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm clicking everything.
Okay, and well, we'll go forward with it, but if Steve gets back on, I'd like him to have that moment to talk about it because it's such an excellent trip and he's got a great way of describing exactly what's going on. And it is a great trip. So if I could get a roll call vote.
Kimberly Smith Colaga,
Yes.
John Chartier,
Yes.
Melissa Clark, yes. Mary Ann Dwyer,
Yes.
Lisa Cavaluna,
Yes.
Diane Salter.
Yes. Motion passes. Their 8th grade 2021 trip is planned. Next, can I get a motion for the approval of employment of Lauren Greider and Paige Anderson?
Move the Brandon Board of Education approve to hire Lauren Greider as speech and language therapist and Paige Anderson as elementary resource room teacher as presented.
Support.
Any discussion on that? Could I get a roll call vote, please?
Kimberly Smith Colaga,
Yes.
John Chartier,
Yes.
Melissa Clark, yes. Mary Ann Dwyer,
Yes.
Lisa Cavaluna,
Yes.
Diane Salter.
Yes. Motion passes. Welcome aboard, Paige and Lauren. Next, can I get a motion to extend the COVID-19 continuity of the learning plan, please?
Move that the Brandon Board of Education approve the Brandon School District Extended Continuity of Learning Plan as required by Public Act 149.
Support.
Okay, any discussion on that? Jan, it's routine that we do that every month, correct?
Yes.
Okay, could I get a roll call vote, please?
Kimberly Smith Colaga,
Yes.
John Chartier,
Yes.
Melissa Clark, yes. Mary Ann Dwyer,
Yes.
Lisa Cavaluna,
Yes.
Diane Salter.
Yes. And can I get a motion for the approval of the first reading of our Title IX policy?
Move the Brandon Board of Education approve the first reading of the Title IX policy as presented.
Support.
Okay, I know we discussed this in our workshop. Is there any other discussion? Okay, could I get a roll call vote, please?
Kimberly Smith Colaga,
Yes.
John Chartier,
Yes.
Melissa Clark, yes. Mary Ann Dwyer,
Yes.
Lisa Cavaluna,
Yes.
Diane Salter.
Yes. Could I get a motion for the approval of the Brandon Educational Support Personnel Association stopgap agreement?
Move that the Brandon Board of Education approve the BESPA stopgap agreement as presented.
Support.
Discussion on that? I know that's routine of what we're doing right now.
Yes, it is. It's matched, it mirrors the BAA and BEA.
Okay. Could I get a roll call vote, please?
Kimberly Smith Colaga,
Yes.
John Chartier,
Yes.
Melissa Clark, yes. Mary Ann Dwyer,
Yes.
Lisa Cavaluna,
Yes.
Diane Salter.
Yes. Could I get a motion for the approval of a substitute pay increase?
Move the Brandon Board of Education approve to increase the substitute pay to $95 per day as presented. Support.
Yep.
Okay, is there any discussion? I know we talked about it at workshop. Okay, having none, could I get the roll call vote, please?
Kimberly Smith Colaga,
Yes.
John Chartier,
Yes.
Melissa Clark, yes. Mary Ann Dwyer,
Yes.
Lisa Cataluna,
Yes.
Diane Salter.
Yes. Okay, next, our action item is gonna be talking about our superintendent search firm finalists. And before I go asking for the motion, we had 5 companies submit bids. 3 of them were out of state, and 2 of them are in state that I know that I'm familiar with, and some of us are. One being MASB, Michigan Association of School Boards, they submitted, and the other one being the Business Leadership Institute. Those were the 2 in state. And again, I can't find my chart, but I remember seeing a drastic difference pay-wise between the out-of-states and the in-states. We're talking 4 to 5 times the amount of what the in-state was quoting for us. And I didn't know, the motion requires that we put who we want to interview, and my suggestion is we just interview the Business Leadership Institute and MASB.
Michigan Leadership Institute?
Yes.
Okay.
Michigan Leadership Institute and MASB, but I didn't know if anybody feels any reason not to interview those 2. And the next is, do we really want a third coming in at those prices?
No, I don't want to spend.
I don't either. So,
Fine with the 2 you presented.
In reviewing them, did anybody perceive any advantages that would be in exchange for that premium?
I didn't see it.
I didn't see it, but I
didn't see any either.
Okay, then if somebody's ready to do the motion with the fill in the blanks, could I get a motion for the approval of superintendent search firm finalists?
Move the Brandon Board of Education approve to invite the following search firms to interview at a special board meeting in December. MASB and Michigan Leadership Institute.
Support.
Okay, any discussion on that?
I think we're looking at December 7th as a tentative date.
That's, yep, that's, again, I was gonna say in discussion also,
Shall
yes,
Shall I redo it, restate the motion?
no, so we will have them to come interview on that date.
Okay,
We're just
got it.
having
Is that still good for everyone?
we're gonna do a December 7th workshop,
Mid-year adjustments
and then we can decide before then if we're gonna pick them, or we wait the 2 weeks out to just pick them at the
Just
regular.
settle, right?
Yeah, to settle, but we're gonna have them come for interview on December 2nd. 7th,
right?
12/7.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think that needs to be part of the motion, it's just picking who we want to come in.
Right.
Okay,
So we just need support?
Yes.
did we get support?
Support.
Support,
Yes.
okay, any other discussion on this?
No, ma'am.
Okay, could I get a roll call vote, please?
Kimberly Smith Colaga,
Yes.
John Chartier,
Yes.
Melissa Clark, yes. Mary Ann Dwyer,
Yes.
Lisa Cataluna,
Yes.
Diane Salter.
Here, yes. Okay, before we go to citizens input, Steve, can you hear us? Steve, here's your shot, you are mute, I think.
There he goes.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, could you give a brief description of what's happening in the Washington DC trip? Just to those that are listening, and for October of 2021. We did approve it, but if we wanted at least you to give a description of what that's all about.
Yeah, I can do that. First, I want to say, Kim, sorry for your loss, and my thoughts are with you and your family.
Thank you.
This year's trip, we moved from October to May due to all the stuff that is going on. Currently, we're waiting to see how things go for this year's 8th graders. And that's going to be a work in progress as we navigate the virus right now. We're hoping everything settles down for May. And if it does, then we're good to go. We started presenting information to this year's 7th graders for next year's trip. in October. And again, we're looking at the situation, and if everything settles down, we're hoping to go and get back on track with our October trips.
But what are some of the highlights?
Well, every year it's a little bit different. This year's 8th grade trip is scheduled to go to Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's birthplace, and then a new monument that has opened up last year in May, but has not received a whole lot of attention due to the virus, is the Dwight David Eisenhower Memorial, which is new. And we're hoping to be able to visit that in May for the first time. There's also a new Smithsonian that is opening up, as well as Museum of the United States National Army Museum, which for next year's 8th graders, we're hoping to get tickets for that.
Great. It's a great trip, Steve. We're so glad, and thank you for organizing this. And so people know that he does. He gets this well organized way in advance.
He does a
So,
fabulous job.
yeah,
He
great
does
job.
an amazing job.
Amazing. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate.
I showed my kids my picture from my 8th grade trip recently. They got a kick out of it. Yeah.
Let me.
I love it.
Steve, you were
I've had a lot of parents.
I was gonna say,
I've
you
had
were
a lot
only
of parents
16.
show me their pictures from 20 years ago.
Oh my gosh. Great job, Steve. Thank you very much. Okay, next on our agenda.
Thank you.
We have citizens input. And again, then we ask that you raise your hand and Maria will announce you. But we need to know your name, address, and group affiliation. And again, I'm not gonna go read through everything again, but we're giving the statements that shall be limited to 3 minutes. Go ahead, Maria. Anybody got their hands up?
I do. I have a Tom Hammond. I'll go in there and,
Okay, Tom, we're calling on you loosely when we're.
okay. It's allowed to talk.
Tom, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, Tom, we can hear you a little low, but we can hear you. Go ahead, Tom, you got the floor.
Okay, thank you. So, Tom Hammond, I live in Lee Lane in Ortonville and Brandon Township. I just have not really a statement, but a question. And that is, I'm curious if you can just comment quickly on the status of.
Tom, can I ask a favor? Can you talk, we can barely hear you. You want to try?
He's muted now, I think.
Tom?
Okay, that should be much better.
Way better, Tom. Okay, now we can hear you. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Okay, so again, Tom Hammond, I live on Lee Lane in Brandon Township. It's not so much a comment as a question. If you're able to answer, I'd really appreciate it. I'm just curious what the status is of the Aquatic and Fitness Center. I realize that the pool is open to swim events for students, but not for community members. And I'm wondering what the, if there is a plan in place to open it and what the limitation, what the current restrictions are perhaps. Just for my knowledge so that I know, when to maybe expect that it might be reopened. Thank you very much.
And Jan?
Yeah, we've been looking into this. I have received some questions. The guidance from the governor has changed. Originally, we were allowed to open for the students and for swim lessons that was deemed safety. We think that we may be able to open for like the USA swim team to practice. We did have a request from Oli to do that. In terms of open swim, that's still a question mark. Social distancing in the locker rooms would be tough, and we have to concern ourselves with the cleaning protocols and all of that. So we are investigating it and would like to do that if first, if we're allowed to do open swim, and if we believe we can do it in a manner that we can keep it clean throughout the day.
Okay, thank you, Jan, appreciate it. I know that's a question I've been needing to get answered too, but thank you very much.
Yeah, and the emergency order may weigh into that as well for the next 3 weeks. So that's something we'll discuss.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Good question. Okay, next we have,
One, Dana De Palma would like to.
okay, Dana, we're gonna get you back up here. Dana, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Hi, Dana, you're welcome back. Go ahead. Floor is yours.
I just first wanted to say thank you for approving the trip for the Washington DC. It is the best trip ever, and thank you to Mr. Hendershot for continuing it and trying to continue it for everything going on right now with COVID. And then also thank you to the school board for everything that you guys always do and trying to consider all aspects for the staff, the students, and the families. I know these decisions are difficult and that everything is new and fluid right now, but I just wanted to let you know I appreciate you listening to everyone and making these tough decisions and trying to help everybody.
Thank you, Dana. Appreciate the compliments.
I don't see any additional.
We're not seeing
comments.
any more hands. She's scrolling one more time.
No additional comments.
Okay. And with no more hands, next on our agenda, I have, can I get a motion please to go to closed session for negotiations?
Will the Brandon Board of Education approve to enter a closed session for the purpose of negotiations as presented?
Support.
Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Kimberly Smith Colaga,
Yes.
John Chartier,
Yes.
Melissa Clark, yes. Marianne Dwyer,
Yes.
Lisa Cavaluna,
Yes.
Diane Salter.
Yes. Okay, only John needs to come in, and I think Jan virtually.
I will send them a link.
Okay, you two, John and Jan, you guys are gonna get the link. Let's give it a couple minute changeover, but I think we should be able to sit right here.
Okay, I'll exit.
Yep, you can exit. I'll
Yes,
send
so-
you a new link.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.